Mr. Chair. Mr.
I appreciate the opportunity to take a short call. My colleagues will be pleased to know. I know they're all eager to speak on this bill. Mr. Chair, I was interested in talking about some of the definition issues that haven't been touched on yet, and I think it is fair to say that this does deserve rigorous debate, because whilst there was an enormous amount of tension on the GCSB bill, this is in fact the bill that then facilitates what was broadly set out in that GCSB bill, which did of course cause great upset amongst the wider New Zealand public over whether or not it had got the right balance between privacy and security. And we would contend that this bill in its form certainly still has not struck that balance. I want to come to, Mr. Chair, the definition first of all around law enforcement agency. Now that's set out in Part 1, Clause 3. And this is obviously something that the Select Committee took an interest in. They originally, as I understand, had a definition that was specifically set out that law enforcement agencies meant the New Zealand Police or any government department declared by the Governor-General by Order in Council to be a law enforcement agency for the purposes of this Act. So basically said everything that applies here will be handed over to the Minister to decide who the law enforcement agencies would be. That was then changed. We now have a clause which states that a specified law enforcement agency within the meaning of Section 50 of the Search and Surveillance Act 2012 that is approved by an Order in Council under that section to use interception devices. So instead of, I do accept that it therefore adds extra criteria. So instead of just saying the Governor-General through Order in Council set out who a law enforcement agency is, it says we will use the provisions of the Search and Surveillance Act to determine the criteria for who will be deemed a law enforcement agency. I just want to look for a moment, Mr. Chair, if I may, at what is set out in the Search and Surveillance Act 2012, Section 50 of that Act, which basically says, look, other than the police, when we're applying trespass surveillance and the use of interception devices, how are we determining who that's going to be? It essentially says that the Minister of Justice may recommend the making of an Order in Council. So just to clarify, I'm assuming therefore, was that a change in which Minister therefore would be making that recommendation from the Minister and the Chair to the Minister of Justice? Just a point of clarification. Excuse me, I was not a member of the Select Committee. That may be something that debated. But the Minister of Justice therefore would be making the recommendation on Order in Council following consultation with the Minister of Police. If he or she is satisfied that it is appropriate for the agency to use interception devices that has the technical capability to intercept private communications in a manner that ensures the reliability of any information obtained through the use of the interception device. So basically, can they do the job, and can we be assured that when they get that information that it's going to be credible? B, policies and procedures are in place to ensure that the integrity of any information obtained through the use of an interception device is preserved. So write up some policies, make sure you've got some good kit. Basically, that's what that bit says. And C, the expertise to extract evidential material from information obtained through the use of an interception device in a form that can be used in a criminal proceeding, and to ensure that any evidential material obtained through the use of an interception device is presented to the court in an appropriate manner. So basically setting the bar for the quality of the way that the material is gathered and the way it's therefore presented, and making sure you've got policies and procedures around that. Now, granted, that is criteria that in and of itself clearly did not exist necessarily in the first interpretation of the first definition of law enforcement agency that might be recommended via Order in Council. The question is that a hard test? You know, basically, if you've got the kit, you write some policy around it, and you make sure that the kit you're using you use credibly, then you're passing the threshold. And as long as the Minister of Justice and the Minister of Police have a chat together and decide that they think it's kosher, then we've potentially got a new law enforcement agency on the books. Now, you might question, well, who would be interested in using these powers as a law enforcement agency? Interesting discussion that was had, in fact, at the Select Committee. I was on the Select Committee for the Search and Surveillance bill. Very technical bill, very important discussion. There were essentially two sets of agencies there that could exercise powers. Mr Chair.
I'm going to call Chris Farfoy.
Oh, I had still...
Sorry. Thank you very much, Mr Chair, for the chance to have a contribution.